It's a challenge in restaurants to stay afloat.
85% of restaurants don't make it to year two. It's a hard game to win, even if you're good.
If you're spending frivolous amounts of money, just not being smart about how you run the ins and outs of your business, you'll fail, and you'll fail fast.
Audience, this is Andres, and he owns a handful of different restaurants here in town. He's an awesome chef, and Customshop is regularly ranked as like one of, if not the best restaurant in Charlotte. I'm really excited to have him here today.
Yeah.
Just want to talk a little bit about, like, I guess first, how you got into being a chef, and then like where that story, like, okay, I have this skill, maybe I can make a business out of this skill. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Getting into being a chef was, I loved eating, which is where that stemmed from. And
Yep.
fortunately enough for me, my mother's an incredible cook, and I grew up in a household where my mom was constantly cooking and making food for us, and we ate out very little, which is pretty ironic because now that's what I do for a living. But um, grew up around great food culture, and constantly eating. So I always like had an inkling for cooking and eating and whatnot when I was younger. And then truthfully, what sparked my interest in food as a career was I was watching the Food Network often.
Sure.
This might be like super taboo for some chefs for me to say this, but like I had no idea you could professionally cook until the Food Network. And I started watching the Food Network. And I never wanted to be like a TV food chef personality per se, but I had no idea it could be a career. And the Food Network kind of brought that to life for me, where I was like, oh, okay, I could do this professionally. And then I started working in a restaurant when I was 15, because at that time, it's not required anymore, but at that time, it was required to have restaurant experience in order to go to culinary school, specifically the
Oh.
one that I wanted to go to, which was the Culinary Institute of America in New
Sure.
York. So, my parents were like, you need to go work in a restaurant and see if you like it. And then also you would have to do it in order to go to this school. And at that time, I'm pretty sure it still is, but the CIA was rated the best culinary school in the country. So I went, started working in a restaurant, and fell in love with it. Like, I loved the concept of going somewhere and getting paid,
Right.
which was much better for me than school. I never disliked school, but it was very boring for me. So yeah, so I started working in restaurants when I was 15. I was still in high school, and worked in restaurants from 15 to 16. Graduated high school when I was 17, and then went to the Culinary Institute of America. I was the only kid in my entire graduating class to go to culinary school, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Went to New York, did 2 years at the Culinary Institute of America. It was a great experience. Very expensive. Fortunately, my parents paid for it. I don't have any like student loans from that, which was nice. Super lucky.
Yeah.
And then came back. My parents were super adamant about me getting a degree in hospitality management. So transferred to FIU, which at the time was like the #2 school for hospitality in Miami, and was super bored after like 2 months of like remedial classes.
Sure.
And they stuck me in like freshman math for like all that stuff. And I was like losing it just going to class and not cooking. So I called the chef where I had worked my internship, and which was a restaurant called Wish on Miami Beach, and asked if they needed anybody. And they told me, yeah, just come in. The chef's different now. So I met the new chef and then got a job there, dropped out of FIU, and just started working. So pretty much worked in Miami until I was the chef partner at two restaurants. One was Beaker and Gray, which was in Wynwood, one of like the first major restaurants that opened in Wynwood. And then we ended up opening Mason. We had a commissary kitchen, and I was there. I was what? Must have been, this was in 2018 when I was at Beacon and Gray, super satisfied in terms of my career and everything. But the cost of living in Miami was like expensive.
Crazy. Yeah.
Right. And I had, at that point in my career, I had two paths that I wanted to take. I either wanted to open my own restaurant, or eventually work somewhere where I was like a chef partner, or like a corporate chef role or something like that. And I have a twin sister, and she went to school at UNC. When she graduated from UNC, she bought a house in Raleigh. And when I found out what she bought a house for, I was like, okay, I should probably consider leaving Florida. So my wife and I came, visited Raleigh several times. Loved like the agriculture scene in North Carolina, and then decided to make the move. So I started applying for jobs here. I took the chef de cuisine job at the Durham Hotel in downtown Durham. which was a cool opportunity. Um, wasn't fantastic after like 7 months. It
Sure.
was like pretty toxic atmosphere. So I started looking for new gigs. I took a massive pay cut to go work for Scott Crawford, who I stand by as the best chef in the state.
Okay.
Um, Massive pay cut. But I thought it would be a good experience. It ended up being a super influential experience for me and how I like lead and operate today. Um, and then did that for as long as I could until needed more money, needed benefits, and then while I had been searching for a job, one of the people that I had interviewed with, his name is Shane Skipper, called me. I had interviewed for a chef position at a Greek restaurant, which just like wasn't my thing, and he knew I would hate it.
Yeah.
But I had done all of my interviews and tastings and all that at their other restaurant, which was like a Mediterranean concept called Vidrio in downtown Raleigh. Um, he was like, "Hey, we have an opening," and I was like, "Okay, cool." So it was a sous chef opening. The money was great, the benefits were great, and I was like, "Alright, I'll just do it," because it was a better situation for me and my family.
Yep.
Did that. 2 weeks into, like, my notice, I gave Scott Crawford a month-long notice as a cook, which was, like, crazy, but I just felt like it was the right thing to do. 2 weeks into that, they called me and they're like, "Hey, the chef's leaving, would you take the executive chef role?" And I was like, "Sure." Um, so it was a little bit more money, same situation benefit-wise, and I was like, "Cool." So I took the job at Vidrio, changed the whole menu. I met my now business partner there, Alex Bridges. He was the general manager at that restaurant and sommelier. Worked there for almost 2 years, and then, during that time, Shang left, moved to Charlotte, and took the president job at Max Hospitality Group. So in my time at Vidrio, I had an event in Charlotte that I had to come to. I came, Shang and I had developed a great relationship. Met with Shang, had some coffee. One thing led to another. He was like, "Do you wanna be my corporate chef?" And I was like, "Okay." And I had had many conversations with him about, like, growing into some sort of a bigger role with the company.
Sure.
So, obviously, it was a great opportunity, and this was in March of 2022.
Oh, so, like, 2 days before COVID sort of
Yeah,
thing? Yeah.
yeah. Um So, my wife and I came, visited Charlotte. Charlotte just felt more like a city for me, felt closer to, like, what Miami was. It's
Sure.
very different, but felt very close to, like, there's sports and just more to do and
Mhm.
just, like, more culture, in my opinion. So, we liked Charlotte, and I was like, "Alright, well, I mean, this is, like, check mark of, like, one of the things I would like to see how my career goes." And it was, like, a corporate chef role. So, I took the job, we moved to Charlotte. 2 days into me working as the culinary director, the world shut down.
Ugh,
Yeah.
literally 2 days before
Yeah, yeah.
COVID.
Yeah,
Damn.
so the world
Okay.
shut down, which was crazy because I essentially spent the first, like, 6 months fortunately, I kept my job, and it was Max Hospitality owns Max Speed Shop and Southbound and the Music Yard and all
Okay.
that stuff, and so barbecue is very, transferable for to go.
Got it.
So we were fortunate that we could adjust the operations and stay open. Um, but essentially the first 6 months of my job was riding around in a car with Shang and going from store to store and making sure that they were doing good with, like, this to-go stuff and, like, paving and adjusting all this stuff,
Yeah.
which was crazy. But, yeah, so I did that for, like, 2 years. COVID was a doozy of a time. And then after, like, about a year and a half, I was like, "Okay, the corporate chef thing is cool, but, like, I've always wanted to own my own place." And, like, my goal was always to open my own restaurant. And one of the goals in moving to North Carolina was that it would be more feasible from a financial perspective to
Sure.
do that.
Yep.
So, fortunately for me, unfortunately for a lot of other people, a lot of people were putting their restaurants on the market because of what had happened. So there was a lot of second generation spaces. So I started looking. One thing led to another. One of my friends had moved here from Miami. His name's Steven DeFalco. He's one of the partners at Pizza Baby. He had like met Trey Wilson. And then he was like, "Hey, I think you should meet Trey." So I met Trey. We never really had any conversations about buying a restaurant or anything of that sort. Just had a conversation, some coffee, and then one thing led to another where one day he was like, "Would you have interest in purchasing Custom Shop?" And I was like, "Sure. I mean, let's go look at it," and
Yeah.
start talking and fell in love with the space. It was the exact size of like the kind of restaurant I would want to open in terms of like type of restaurant. It was what I would want to do. Um, so we started conversations and we struck a deal, and I started out by buying the majority shares. It was me, my dad was my business partner, one of my lifelong friends, invested a little bit of money, took out a home equity loan to buy Custom Shop, so second mortgage, and then mustered up the money to do it, and then bought the majority shares of Custom Shop. So, um, and then I would say about 6 months into owning Custom Shop, we invested a bunch of money into the kitchen. I mean, the restaurant had been there for 15 years, which is a testament to what Trey had done prior, and which is crazy. A lot of restaurants don't make it past 2.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I felt super weird about changing the name of the restaurant or anything of that sort. Also, like, the restaurant had, like, some loyal clientele that I did not wanna lose.
yeah, yep,
So, to me, it just made more sense to, like, pay homage to, like, a restaurant that had been a staple in the city for 15 years, keep the name, refresh the brand. So,
mhm,
like, rebrand and remarket and all that stuff, and then obviously, make any investments that needed to be made to the actual physical space. So we did all that. And then 6 months in, Alex, my former GM and now business partner, had some, like, issues, family-wise that had brought him to the area, and once that was all, like, water under the bridge, he came to eat at Custom Shop, loved it, and he was like, "Hey, I wanna work here," and I was like, "What about just being my business partner?" Because at that point, I was like, I needed someone in the front of the house, like, I'm a back of the house guy.
got it.
Wine's not my thing. Dealing with people is not my thing. So I was just like, I need someone who can work in the front, but someone who can be like bought in and be a partner. And Alex entertained the idea, and him and Trey ended up having a conversation, and he ended up buying out Trey's remaining shares. Um, and then the rest is pretty much history, I
Yeah.
guess, kind of like got into that point and then, you know, opened marinas 2 years after that, which was cool. And now we're on the verge of opening a wine bar, which is super cool. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that, but yeah.
That so that's really cool. I mean, a couple of things strike me. It sounds like you do a really good job of, like, not burning bridges, like,
Yeah.
because like, you went back to your first job and,
Yeah, yeah.
like, you've kinda gone back to folks you've worked with in the past, and I think that's just an observation of, like, okay, because so many people when they leave a job, it's maybe not the most, like, "Screw you, I'm out of here," sort of thing, but it's also not like, "Okay, well, let me keep, like, watering this relationship so that it continues to grow." I think that's, like, a testament to, like, how you're probably approaching your jobs and business relationships, like, that's a good
Yeah.
thing. One of the questions I have is, like, you mentioned, like, okay, so you took on Custom Shop, you became the majority owner. At that point, you're sort of in control of the front of the house, the back of the house. Is there, like, another layer of the house where it's, like, the business side?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, so you do the back end and the business stuff, or you have
Oh,
yeah, that's
all of that.
you do all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, then in my mind of, like, when you're in hindsight viewing the changes you were able to make to Custom Shop where now it's, like, successful, what ratio of that is like, "Hey, I'm a killer chef, and I know what I'm doing here," versus the side of, "I knew what the business needed outside of the food." Like, is it like, "No, it's 90%, back of the house, 10% knowing what I'm doing with the business," or is
Yeah.
it a lot 50/50?
I think it depends on time of year, and it depends on, um, where you're at, like, in the story for me at least, right? So I think at the beginning it was a lot more back-end business decisions, and I learned a lot from Shang. He's one of my mentors. I learned a lot from him in terms of, like, how to get restaurants to make money, which is obviously, I mean, that's why we do what we do.
Right,
So,
exactly.
I love cooking and I'm passionate about it, but, like, at the end of the day, how much we profit is
Right.
really important. It was, the first few, call it like the first 3 months was really like understanding the ebbs and flows of the business, and understanding, like, what it costs to run it and how we can optimize, our profitability and what we needed to do, in order to do that. So, and there's decisions that you make in terms of like, okay, how much money do we want to spend on like marketing, PR in order to like get our name out there? And in today's day and age, you have to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And that costs money. Unless if you're a marketing and PR firm and you do it yourself.
Right.
But if not, it costs money. But it's an investment that you see years down the road. So, I mean, and it's something that you have to continue to invest money into. And like, we're fortunate that we have a great relationship with Black Wednesday, who's
Yeah.
like our marketing and PR partner. And that relationship just continued to like flourish over the years. But, we spent a lot of money on marketing and PR in the first year, but you don't really see the return on that until year 2, 3. Like we see that return now where we stay relevant. but it's because of a continuous buildup. So getting the restaurant back into the forefront of the city, like, to me, one of the things that, and this is nothing against former ownership in any way, but to me, one of the things that, like, caught me off guard was how could a restaurant in a city that doesn't have at this time, which is, let's call it 3 years ago, and the food scene has changed a lot here.
Oh, yeah.
But 3 years ago, how could a restaurant that's been open for 15 years not be super well known? You know, to me, a restaurant that's been open for 15 years is a staple.
Sure.
And, like, how is it that I would tell people in my conversations with them, like, "Yeah, I just purchased Custom Shop," and they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's that?"
Do you make
Like,
custom motorcycles?
right. I'm like, "It's a restaurant that's been open for 15 years in this city," like, which is crazy. It just, like, shocked me that people didn't know it existed. And to me, I was like, "Okay, we need to change that."
Mhm.
So, a lot of, like, the initial investment came into spending money on marketing, PR, and getting our name out there. So, yeah, and also when it came to, like, menu and back of the house operations, I didn't wanna, like, just come in and change everything. Like, to
Right.
me, it made more sense to, like, slow roll that stuff. So I would say at first, the first, like, 6 months was a lot more, like, driving it from a business perspective versus driving the food program,
Mhm.
and then we switched. So
Got
it just, like, depended.
Yeah, sure.
So
So you need to be able to have, like, your finger on the pulse to know,
oh,
"Hey,
yeah.
during this season of the business, I need to do this." And then, "Oh, and now it's our, busy time, we need to adjust
Yeah.
and do this." A question I have is, at what point in the story did you say, "We need to activate marketing"? Because like
Right.
you said, it's like, "Okay, we need to get this going, but I know the payoff isn't gonna be for 2 years
Yeah.
potentially." When you're in a business where the margins are already razor thin
Yeah.
most of the time, it it sounds like you knew you had to stomach the investment for a little while, knowing it was gonna pay off
Yeah.
in the future. So what I'm getting at is, like, was that something you did, "Hey, on day 1, I know I'm buying this. I know I need to reach out to somebody to start this relationship," or was it, "Hey, I'm 6 months in, I have my feet on the ground, I know what I'm doing. Now let's do some marketing."
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Day 1.
Day 1. Okay,
Yeah,
so
day 1. Day 1 because we live in a day and age where word of mouth is still king
sure.
when it comes to restaurants and hospitality, right? Like, people tell you, "Hey, I went to this place, it was awesome," and you're
Yeah.
like, "Cool, I'm gonna check it out." But next to word of mouth is really Instagram and social media, and if you're not relevant, no one knows. If you're not constantly popping up on someone's phone or their algorithm, like, no one knows. So, like, marketing, SEO, and social really was, like, a super important priority for me, and, like, PR as well, people understanding that there had been a change of ownership, understanding that, like, we were giving life to something that had been here for so long. You know, being able to tell that story and tell it correctly was huge, and, yeah, I mean, that was, like, I mean, we, like, as soon as I took over, I would say within 2 weeks' time, we had already signed our contract with Black Wednesday.
Great, and that's paying off. That's how I heard about you guys,
Right.
granted, like, through my wife works at Axios, and, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure Corey set, like, something up, like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys gotta come check that out." So day 1, you're thinking about marketing, you know you have to play, like, the social media game. I think what's really interesting about Charlotte in particular is, like you said, "Hey, the people who are all here already don't know about this place that's been here for 15 years. But add on the addition of, hey, there's 175 people moving here
Right.
every day.
Yeah.
So even if you were like, hey, all the people here know me already, there's
Right.
still an aspect of marketing. Well, there's more people coming
Mhm.
and there's more restaurants here and we have to compete like
Yeah.
for against the folks and for new like audience members.
Yeah.
So I know like restaurant community is pretty tight knit and you're probably in the same circles as like other business owners. How do you like play the game of like competing against them, but also like, hey, we're all in the, kind of in this together.
Right.
So like what does that sort of feel like?
So, and I'm pretty good friends with a lot of other chefs that are doing incredible things in this city, and the food scene in Charlotte over the past 3 years has really just like grown at a pretty exponential rate in my opinion, and I don't think the food scene in this city gets as much love as it deserves. Because there's a lot of incredible people doing incredible things. I've always been of the opinion that all ships will rise. So if we, as like a tight knit restaurant community, are constantly like pushing each other and to stay relevant, to continue to evolve and continue to like be who we can be, um, everyone's just going to be more successful in the long run.
Mhm.
If we create an overall culture in this city that dining out in this city is cool and we're a cool city to dine out in, someone who comes to Custom Shop once a week, once a month, whatever it is, they're not gonna eat at Custom Shop every day,
Right.
and we change our menu often, but not often enough to be cool
Every day.
14 days in a
Yeah, right.
row.
Yeah, right.
If I'm doing something cool, but then like, Sam Hart or Sam Dominich or like Callan at Rada and any of these guys are also doing something cool. Like the people that come to Custom Shop are they're gonna go and frequent their restaurants also. And to me, I've just like I think the stronger the community is, the better it is for everybody. And like sure, yeah, they're my competitors, but I want to see them succeed because then it means the city's succeeding in terms of getting people to go to those kind of restaurants,
Yeah.
right? Because like for a long time, Charlotte had this image of, we're a banker city and, everything is like a big box steakhouse. And it's
Sure.
like, cool. Like, how do we get people to not spend their money at like Fleming's or like, I don't know, other restaurants? I'm not going to get
Yeah.
into my opinions here, but
Yeah.
how do we get people to not spend their money there and spend their money at like locally chef owned, chef driven restaurants,
Yeah.
which is, that's the community that I really belong to.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does make sense, and I mean, Charlotte Airport is one of the most I think it's like the 4th or 6th
Yeah.
busiest airport in the on the planet or something like that.
It's up there.
So,
Yeah.
y if I agree, like, when I moved to Charlotte in 2020, in Charlotte, I'm not the biggest foodie in general, but, like, I didn't, like outside of, like, maybe having some good barbecue, like, I didn't really know what Charlotte had
Right.
or, like, what it was known for, and like, if Charlotte as a whole is known as, like, these great pockets of great locally owned food, those folks who are passing through, who are at the airport for 4 or 5 hours, they will leave and go explore the food based on, like, the reputation of the scene
Yeah.
rather than, like, one restaurant here and there.
Right.
So I agree with you that, like, a rising tide raises all boats or whatever
Yeah.
the saying
Whatever
is.
the exact phrase
Yeah.
is, but yes.
I agree with you, and I think it's becoming more known as, like or I think it's that people see the effort of folks trying to, like, make it known
Yeah,
as a foodie city. I do see some folks where, like, on TikTok or Instagram where it's almost, like, trendy to kinda, like, shit on Charlotte
of course.
or to kinda like, "Ah, Charlotte's mid, like, the food is whatever." I see a lot of that, like, that lane of my algorithm on TikTok, like,
Yeah.
exists of people kinda just rolling their eyes at Charlotte, like is that, like, a relatively new thing that like, do you see that from your side as well?
Yeah, I mean, I see it. I see a lot of people comparing, like, people saying that, like, well, Charleston is a much better food city, and like, I don't know, like Nashville's a much better food city in the South, and like Savannah and all these other cities that, like, sure, they've had like some pretty like well-known chefs that have like planted their flags there and whatnot, but I think there's trash food in every city.
Everywhere. Yeah.
So
What is it? 80% of restaurants get their stuff from Cisco. It's all the same
oh,
food
yeah,
cooked by a
this good
different
thing's
person.
huge.
Yeah, I'm like
This good thing's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just think it depends. I think it's about, like, who people choose to ultimately, I guess it's, like, who people choose to give their money to, right? Like, are people frequenting, like, large, very publicly owned restaurants, or are people frequently small business, like, and, like, chef-driven restaurants, and what is getting supported by the local community, and what does the local community have interest in? And I think it says a lot about, like, who lives in a city, more so than like what people are trying to do in that city, right? Because I think you have artisans in every city, um, but I don't think every city has people who want to support those artisans. And
Mm,
I think it just
mhm.
depends on like the demographic and like the overall state of like how people are spending their capital ultimately.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of it like, I got my marketing chops working with musicians back in the
right,
day. And what I've noticed with musicians is, like, say, like, a general any city, a musician coming out of the city, there's, like, a segment of the audience that wants to support that thing from their town as, like, an early adopter.
yeah,
Like, no matter what, it's local, it's from their town, so they're gonna support it kinda period.
mhm,
There's a large segment of the audience that don't wanna be early to the party. Like, no one wants to be the first person at a party. But once they kinda see recognition or popularity either from other towns. All of a sudden, someone in Atlanta is talking about Customs Shop. Someone might go, "Oh, wait, they're talking about it there? Oh, like, there's a party going on.
Right.
Now I wanna go to the party." Do you notice, like, a big tipping point where, like, at some point it's trendy or new actually goes up a level to that secondary, like, word of mouth where people are actually getting there and you're getting those repeat visitors where it's
Yeah.
not just because it's new? What is the plan to get someone to come back a second time versus to get them to come just once?
Just for the hype.
Yeah.
I think staying power is, like, important, right? For a restaurant specific, I mean, I think all brands and all companies deal with, like, how do we get people to, like, either A, buy our product again or spend money on us again? And I think it's, like, an ever evolving thing, and you have to be, like, cognizant of, like, what's popular, trends, all of these things, and that's crazy in today's day and age because, like, I mean, like, you have things that are viral for what, 2 days, and then
Right.
people forget it ever existed.
Yeah.
So and then you have, like, seasonal things that are viral, like pumpkin spice, right? Which is, like, rampant
Yep.
everywhere now, but then it disappears by December, and,
Yep.
like, everyone forgets that pumpkins exist. So, um, to me, I think what brings people back to restaurants specifically is, and this is tough to explain because it's really difficult to, like you can't really, like, track it or measure it, but I think what will bring someone back to a restaurant is how they felt. Because ultimately eating and dining out is such a, like, culturally driven, like, soul quenching thing, for most people that, it's something we've done all our lives. It's something that we do with family every day. I mean, it's a necessity to
Yeah.
live, so, like, we have to eat to survive. So it's just a matter of, like, how does someone feel when they spent their money at our establishment? And I think day-to-day execution from back to front of the house has to, like, have this, like, symbiotic relationship that when people come in the door, they feel welcome, and when people left, they feel like they were treated with respect, and ultimately, they felt great inside of the establishment. So, I think how someone feels will impact them more ultimately, and, like, sure, they can have something delicious or, like, someone can make them an incredible beverage,
Mhm.
and they're gonna be like, "Oh, this one drink was good, this one plate of food that I had was good," but ultimately, they're gonna be like, "You know what? That place was awesome, and I felt good in there."
Yeah.
And that's what's gonna get someone to come back to a restaurant, and it's really difficult to manage that on a day in and day out basis because you're dealing with people.
Yeah.
So
Right. Different people with different expectations, they've
correct.
heard different things about the place.
Yeah. And I mean, your employees, like,
Yeah.
human equity is the most challenging thing to manage in a restaurant because ultimately your people are gonna control how someone feels in your place.
Yeah.
So, which is tough.
It must be hard. I've worked in the restaurant. Been like a dishwasher and a host back in the day, but I
Crushed it.
was never yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And, but, I mean, dealing with that many people on, like, a day where you're having a shitty day,
Mhm.
like, that must be hard.
Yeah.
And, one as just the server, but then, like, as the chef in the back end, like, what is your policy on, like, a returned dish? Even, like, you look at it, you're like,
Yeah.
"This is perfect. This is exactly as it should be," but, "Hey, customer's right." Like,
Sure.
what is that? Do you kinda just roll your eyes and give them what they want, or do you go and, like, maybe educate them on, "Hey, actually,
Yeah.
this is a medium steak. You're wrong."
So it's tough, and you have to treat it on a case by case basis. Ultimately, someone's sending something back because it's not to their liking, right? That doesn't mean that what we sent out is incorrect.
Right.
If someone sends back a steak or whatever and it's perfectly cooked, in my opinion, I will always, I'm going to take care of it. I'm not going to make someone pay for something they didn't eat. I just don't feel like that's right. And it is what it is. It's part of our business. It's what we do. Um, but I'm also not gonna offer them another steak cooked exactly the same way because I know they're gonna send it back. So, in a situation like that, I'll sometimes nicely, sometimes not nicely, I'll speak to the server and I'll just be like, "You need to steer them in a different direction
Mm.
because 'cause they're just not gonna like what how we do this one thing." And that's fine. Not every you can't please everybody, you
Yeah.
know? But it's like steer them in a different direction, have them order something else, see what other options they would like, and we'll do whatever we can to try and accommodate a guest and, like, make sure that the guest leaves. I mean, ultimately, the goal is the guest left like they felt like they were respected, right?
Sure.
So we'll do whatever we can to make sure of that, but I'm not just gonna keep sending out steaks until someone's like, "Okay, cool.
This is right.
This is perfect."
It's the same steak 4 times.
Right. You know, 'cause it's like there comes a point where you're, like, disrespecting the cow that died.
Yes.
So
Right.
it's like, like, why?
Yeah.
So
One of the things I'm thinking of is so, like, you're talking about kind of orchestrating the whole experience, and then there's a level of, well, the experience was great, but let's say if it was $2,000, the value of that
yeah.
experience might be out of whack, so you go, "That was amazing, but I can only go there once a year."
Yeah.
Say, like, at Custom Shop, it feels like you might have more levers where you can control the full experience, say, compared to the location at an Optimist Hall.
Right.
Do you have is that less? Are the expectations at an Optimist Hall less, so it actually is more freeing? Do you have more or less levers to control the experience there?
I would say at Optimus Hall, we have less levers because you have to be you're part of a greater thing, right? Custom shop, we have full control. We can do whatever we want. But at Optimus Hall, you can't. You're part of a hall. You have to like do things a certain way. Plus, you have people who are literally right next to you doing things a certain way, charging a certain amount of money, a range. So we have to kind of like fit that scope. So
Mhm.
it's more limiting, challenging, but still feasible and doable. But you have to be more approachable in a place like Optimus Hall versus at Custom Shop where our duck breast, now we're doing like a large format duck dish and it's like $60 where I can't serve $60 duck at Optimus Hall.
No.
Like, no one will buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just depends.
Yeah.
And I guess in the other regard, like when it comes to custom shop, like we market ourselves as a neighborhood restaurant and that's what we are. And I stand true to like being who we are as our identity, right? So, for example, like when they announced that Michelin was coming to the city, like a lot of people were like, "Are you gonna start doing a tasting menu?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not who we are. We're just gonna continue to do what we do. And we're a neighborhood restaurant. I don't want to put on a tasting menu. I don't want to start increasing our price point just because the Michelin Guide is coming. Like, if the Michelin Guide deems us good enough to be on their guide, that's fantastic.
Right.
But we are who we are for our community. And I have this conversation with Kyle, who's like our general manager now at Custom Shop, often when like we want to do something cool, right? Like we want to bring in Wagyu steak or something like that. And I'm like, it's a cool product, let's do it. And it's like, okay, how much do we have to charge for it? And like things cost what they cost.
Yeah. Right.
Like I can't just take it on the head
Right.
because I want to be at a certain price point. So sometimes we won't bring in certain products because I don't feel comfortable putting a $90 steak on my menu,
That
because I want to kind of stay in some sort of range
sure.
where we're approachable for that like echelon of restaurant, if that makes sense. So,
That does make a lot of sense. One of the questions I was gonna ask you is about, like, when you're in the back of the house and you're wearing your business owner and chef hat.
yeah,
Like, at sometimes, I'm sure this side is like, "Hey, if we cut costs here or maybe cut a corner here, we would be more profitable."
yeah,
But then the chef is like, "But I have this quality that I'm
right.
trying to deliver." Like, do you feel that, like, dissonance in your own mind, or is it always clear, "Hey, the chef always wins and business figured out?"
No, it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle because like, the chef in me wants to do really cool things, right? And then there's times when like the business owner in me is like, okay, that's cool, but like it's a bad decision.
Right.
And sometimes it comes from trial and error. Like we'll do something and it's like, okay, let's see how it works. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we adjust. But it's a constant battle. And decisions are always made with like, I guess it's like you have one person on each shoulder, right? Like, yeah, do this super cool Wagyu thing. And then like the business owner me is like, you're an idiot. You're gonna lose money. And it's like, okay. So it's just a constant battle. And I always have to, I mean, I don't have a choice, right? I have to view things in both aspects
Right.
ultimately, which is a good discipline to have
Yeah.
also.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's not a bad thing by any means.
With that discipline, do you find that, hey, we're on a hot streak the last couple of months, we maybe have more room to take a bigger swing?
Yeah.
Or is it always like, nope, no matter what, stick within our parameter. We know what we're trying to do,
Yeah.
whether it's good or bad.
For me, it's like, slow and steady wins the race, right? So it's like, cool, if we have like two Herculean months, I'm not going to let up because we had two Herculean months. Like, it's great. That's to our advantage. But the reason why we had those Herculean months is because we do things the way we do things. So
Right.
it's about consistency and continuing to do things the same way day in and day out and constantly trying to be in line with, like, our business metrics, but then also, like, like, our chef and, like, who we are metrics.
Sure.
So which is a constant, like, battle.
Yeah. Working with Black Wednesday
Mhm.
or a PR firm, like,
Yeah.
so they're a PR firm, they don't